Hello and welcome to Lecture 1 of this course. This course is called the Portal course for the Master of Arts in Criminal Justice degree program. That means it's the course through which you're supposed to enter the program. It's basically the equivalent of your graduate level Intro to Criminal Justice. And as a result, this first lesson is designed to ensure that all Master of Criminal Justice students understand the purpose of the program and the requirements associated with earning the Masters of Criminal Justice degree. So if you're not a criminal justice major, please bear with us. This first lesson, and actually a little bit of the second lesson, will be dealing primarily with things that need to be addressed by Master of Criminal Justice students. So if you're here as a guest, you're more than welcome to be here. If you're not a criminal justice major, but just be aware that this course is the portal course for our program, and therefore bear with us in the beginning here. We're going to be covering material like the graduate handbook and all the expectations of being in the Masters of Criminal Justice degree program. So let's talk about the purpose of the MACJ degree program. There are two primary purposes for this degree program. First, to provide professionals already working in the criminal justice system with the knowledge and skills to help them move into leadership positions. And second, to prepare students to advance on to doctoral programs in criminal justice or criminology by giving them the knowledge and research skills they need to succeed in a PhD program. Now, if this doesn't fit you, neither of these two descriptions fit what you're in. You're either not working in the criminal justice system right now, but you hope to be, and you're not interested in going on to a PhD. That doesn't mean you're not welcome here. That doesn't mean we're going to exclude you, but just realize that these are the two primary reasons this degree exists, and it's tailored in its curriculum, and the course material we cover is designed for these two groups. In the past, we did an alumni survey, and we found that the two groups that benefited most from the Masters of Criminal Justice degree program and the groups that were more likely to say that their degree was useful and that they do use it were these two groups. So we focused our orientation towards these two groups which found it most useful. We also found that alumni survey that a few alumni missed the whole point of graduate level education. We had a small number, but significant enough to disturb me, that said that they wished that they had had pursuit driving and firearms and defensive tactics and things like that, because after all, we are trying to master the field. They missed the point entirely, and hopefully you don't fit into that category. That's vocational training. That's usually conducted either at a police academy and or community college. At the bachelor's degree, it's more of a liberal arts education, and when you get into the master's degree or any graduate program, it's far more research-based. Theory, research, that's the focus of this degree. It is not hands-on, and it will not be hands-on, so just be aware of that. So it's helpful for me to at least cover the origins of the academic field of criminal justice to understand where you fit in and where this academic curriculum fits in the greater criminal justice system world. So first off, in the beginning, the early 1930s, some colleges and universities began offering what were called police science courses. Not degrees, but just courses. This was actually first initiated by a guy by the name of August Vollmer. August Vollmer is a very interesting character, a big police reformer, made great strides in the early 1900s, getting the police far more technologically advanced, bringing in forensic science, automobiles, radios, things like that. August Vollmer played a big role in those advances within law enforcement. And he was also a professor at the University of California at Berkeley, and at the same time, the police chief for the Berkeley Police Department. As a result, he saw the value in a college education. So he started offering police science courses within the curriculum at the University of California, and started hiring college-educated people as police officers. Keep in mind, in the 1930s, less than 10% of the U.S. population had a college degree, so it was very unheard of. since most police officers at the most only had a high school education, that he was hiring people with bachelor's degrees as police officers, and started the impetus for developing some sort of crime-related education in criminal justice. Unfortunately, most of these courses just disappeared in the 1940s with World War II and resources being deployed elsewhere, and most of our young men who were taking these courses to become police officers were sent overseas to fight in the military, and eventually those programs went away. Another origin of criminal justice education was also during the early 1930s. Some sociology programs at colleges and universities began exploring the issue of crime. Sociologists like Edwin Sutherland here at the University of Chicago studied the lives and behaviors of criminal offenders. However, this remained a very small and unpopular subfield of sociology. It was given the name criminology. And if there was one way you wanted to cut your career short as a sociologist, was to study criminology. It was thought to be too applied and wasn't something that was of value. Nevertheless, there were a number of programs throughout the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s that did study crime and criminal behavior. Things changed dramatically in the 1960s. During the 1960s, a number of things in the criminal justice field were experienced throughout the entire United States. First off, there was a dramatic increase in crime. Crime had actually been pretty stable even in the 1920s and 30s during the Great Depression, and gangsters and Al Capone and people like that. Overall crime was still pretty low. But in the 1960s, starting in the early 1960s, crime started to skyrocket and continued to skyrocket through the 1980s. So that was a major concern to people in the United States. There was also declining respect for government authority, a dramatic increase in illegal drug use. Alcohol use had always been high in the United States, but illegal drug use actually had been pretty rare. It's pretty widespread today, but that only started in the 1960s. There was widespread and often violent protests. Some of that violence was on the part of the police. Protests over the civil rights movement, protests over women's rights, protests against the Vietnam War, protests against the establishment, lots of different things going on, and a lot of violence and unrest in these protests. There were literally hundreds of major riots in urban areas throughout the 1960s, massive riots. And then finally there was assassination attempts of many key political leaders. Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy when he was running for president, George Wallace, Governor George Wallace when he was running for president, assassination attempt and was paralyzed. So all these things really disturbed America. It seemed like America was coming apart at the seams, and crime was a major focus on everyone's mind. As a result, President Lyndon Johnson and Congress organized a commission in 1966 to study the problems of crime and criminal justice in the United States. These government leaders, as they're putting together this commission, quickly learned, to their surprise, that there were few experts on crime, and there wasn't any academic discipline that studied crime or the criminal justice system. You know, we deal with issues like education. Well, you go to educators to get those people's opinions. And if you have questions related to the economy and finance, you call in economists to answer those questions. If you have problems related to, family health and mental health issues, well, you bring in psychologists. Well, we're studying crime here. We have a major crime problem. We're going to bring in the criminologists. Well, they didn't really exist. There were very few of them, and there were no criminal justice or criminology programs, just individual courses and a few individual instructors teaching these courses. So this President's Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice, that's what the committee was called, was very shocked by this. One of the shocking things out of that was we didn't even know how much crime there was. Nobody could tell Congress that crime has gone up by 50% or 43% because there was not uniformity in the way we collected statistics on crime. So it was very disturbing to those in government. And this committee, the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice, made a number of recommendations, actually hundreds of recommendations, on how to improve the criminal justice system and those who work in the criminal justice system. These recommendations included developing an academic discipline to study crime and criminal justice issues. Duh, seems like common sense. So the committee also recommended that all law enforcement and corrections officers be required to have a college education. The purpose of the college education was not vocational training. They weren't recommending that we start police academies in universities. Actually, it was counter to that. They wanted to create, through education, a well-rounded workforce of people in the criminal justice system who could think critically, evaluate practices, and understand their place in the broader world and within the broader criminal justice system. So this is where we get criminal justice programs, and they're not designed to be police academies. Police academies are separate, and they do their job of training entry-level law enforcement officers. Corrections academies do the same thing for correctional officers. The purpose of a criminal justice education is to provide you with a well-rounded education about the criminal justice system and a general broad understanding of the world and the place of the criminal justice system within that broader world. So the federal government started pumping funds into these criminal justice programs, into universities, to encourage them to establish criminal justice or criminology degree programs. These early academic programs in criminal justice used a mixture of different faculty members. One of the issues or problems that they ran into was, okay, we have now a new discipline called criminal justice. Who teaches it? I mean, we don't have people who have graduated from these programs because we're just starting these programs. So the faculty members ended up early on being a mixture of different types of people. Some were lawyers and judges. The benefit of that was that they had higher education as well as criminal justice field experience. But they didn't understand necessarily the social science aspect of things, only the legal aspect. We had police officers teaching, but unfortunately most of these police officers had very low education levels. It was actually not unheard of in the 1970s to have some college courses being taught by police officers with no college education. Even today, we still have some college courses at low-level, low-quality programs being taught by police officers with only a bachelor's degree. Here at the University of Toledo, we require at least a master's degree for police officers or anybody from the outside to be teaching our courses at the undergrad level. But early on, many of these police officers didn't have any college education. And then we had researchers from sociology and political science teaching, and they had the social science aspect of it, but other than what they'd researched or what they read, they didn't know much about the criminal justice system. So those things combined made to pretty low-quality programs when we first started. So the quality was extremely low, in part because a lot of the teaching, especially from the lawyers and judges and police officers, was basically telling war stories. We didn't have a whole lot of research to base things on, for one, but two, these people weren't educated in criminal justice, and some of them weren't educated at all. And they're just basically saying, well, this is the way we do things. Well, that doesn't make it right. And so that creates a number of issues. Now we've got research, so we know what works, what doesn't, how people actually behave. So it's not just anecdotal information being spewed out in the classroom. So over the last 5 decades, the quality of criminal justice education has increased dramatically. In fact, in most criminal justice programs, criminal justice professors all have a PhD in criminal justice or criminology. As you look around our program, unfortunately that's not the case, but that's where the direction we're headed. But most criminal justice programs, all the faculty members have a PhD. Many of them also have field experience, being police officers or corrections officials or things like that, but they do have a PhD in criminal justice, or at least in sociology with a concentration in criminology. We also have tens of thousands of research studies by today that we can now base our teaching on. thousands of research studies conducted on crime and the criminal justice system and those that work within the criminal justice system. So it's vastly increased our state of knowledge on these topics. We now have textbooks full of information from these research studies. Also, most criminal justice programs now provide a broad academic orientation towards criminal justice education. Not formal training, these are not police academies, and not war stories either. It's based on solid evidence, empirical research from many decades now of research. So, with that foundation, let's talk about our readings. So the readings for this week, the first reading and probably the most important reading for this week is your graduate student handbook for the MACJ program. Again, if you're not an MACJ major, I apologize, bear with us. We'll get on to the material you're looking for in a lesson or two. But since this is the portal course, it's important that the students going through are familiarized with the student handbook. If you haven't read this yet, which you should have read it, you need to. MACJ majors need to know everything in this handbook. These are the rules for the MACJ program. It covers what your requirements are for completion of the degree, what can get you kicked out of the program, deadlines for paperwork that you need to have in. So we expect you to be adults, to have read this, to understand it, and to follow all the rules contained therein. So it's extremely important that you read it, and you'll have many quiz questions regarding the material in this handbook. So I encourage you to read it and take notes on it. Then the second reading, Observations and Reflections on the Evolution of Crime-Related Higher Education, basically is a more in-depth discussion of what I've already talked about in this lesson, how the criminal justice academic field developed, give you a little bit more insight into history into that, and the issues we've had to struggle with. Some of them I've already mentioned, the quality of instructors, the quality of education that's being provided, and how we've over time overcome these issues, and the purpose of a criminal justice education. And your third reading for this week is the article, The Criminal Justice Degree in Policing, Conceptual Development or Occupational Primer. This article is a research article that discusses a study, a survey of over 1,000 law enforcement officers. The survey sought to investigate whether or not officers with a criminal justice degree appreciated the value of their degree. And the findings were pretty unanimous that police officers with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, one, they favored a curriculum that was much more theoretical, not hands-on, not training, not technical, not a police academy type of degree. And so it supported the way we already teach criminal justice in most universities, and it found that those with a criminal justice degree really valued their degree once they were out in the field. And what they got out of their criminal justice degree was a broad understanding of the criminal justice system, a broad understanding of the criminal law, a in-depth understanding of human diversity, human relations, communication skills, writing skills, and problem solving. And that's the things that we intend to impart in our degrees, both at the undergrad and graduate level. So please read all three of these documents, take notes on them, and don't forget to take Quiz 1. It's due by the end of this week, so make sure you read them quickly and answer the quiz questions regarding that material. And if you run into any questions, please be sure and email me.